It's time again for the Insiders with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.
Hi, I'm Scott Jensen, former Assembly Speaker.
And I'm Chuck Chvala, former Senate Majority Leader.
And we're the Insiders. And this week we're talking about an issue that really is for insiders, but it actually matters to people all across the state of Wisconsin. And that is a question about the building of transmission lines in the state, how it's going to get paid for, how they're going to get constructed, and how much of that's going to be on your bill every month from the electric companies here in the state of Wisconsin. And there are two questions out there, two models out there. One is that historically we've wanted to have stability and a robust transmission system, so we've relied on the local utilities to help build those. Other people say, well, if we have competition and they have to compete for the right to build those transmission lines, maybe we can lower the prices, and that would save people some money on their electric bill. And that question has the legislature paralyzed. They tried to do something last session. They couldn't get it done. They're trying to do something again this session. And it's not because they don't have enough votes on the floor, because I think in a free vote, both chambers have super majorities actually on these issues. It's within the Republican caucus where this debate is occurring and keeping the bill from getting to the floor and getting to the governor's office. So Chuck, how does this whole thing play out? Because it's kind of important.
I think Scott has teed it up exactly correctly. This is where ideology meets reality and runs into reality and finds out that ideology should not trump reality. Here's the deal. Some Republicans believe in the market overall, but the problem is there's literally a company out of Texas involved in this that would like to do the transmission lines. By the way, does anybody remember what happened in winter a few years ago? Texas' grid system for a big chunk of the state shut down because it was not well done. It wasn't well handled. That's what they want to bring to Wisconsin. Now, not having warmth or not having heat in Texas in the wintertime can be uncomfortable, but in Wisconsin, it's devastating. You actually lose lives. So why wouldn't we want to have our utilities, which have really good reputations across the country, as well as the IBEW and all these unionized workers and others who do the work for us, make sure that they do it and they do it right. If we go out there having to fix, it's going to be too late if we say oops later on and they got the transmission line wrong. And guess what? That can happen. You want good people doing this who know what they're doing. And by the way, you want the same people here who are definitely going to have to maintain the lines once the other guys are gone. You want them to know what it was that was put up and make sure that they're all on the same page. This one is labor guys, the utility people from Wisconsin. Why would we not want to give this business to Wisconsin businesses? By definition, We Energies, WP&L, MG&E, all these folks are actually our people. And by the way, even if it goes, here I am, I'm the guy of the working guy. And yes, I believe that there are going to be a lot of IBEW guys who are going to get overtime. And that might be the money that they give to their kids that'll help them on a down payment on a house or help them to buy a car when they've got to drive a long ways to get to a job. I want those guys to have money. But you know what? Even if it goes to the CEO who's already making $2 million, I'm happy with that because he'll buy some car out of a Wisconsin dealership that's going to circulate more money back into the economy. Why would we want to give this away to people who don't do a good job, who are uncertain of what they'll do? By the way, you know how much we're going to save on this? It's a penny a month at the high end for the average homeowner. Why would we, for a penny a month, take a chance that somebody might die because we don't have the transmission done correctly? That's just ridiculous. There are so many reasons why we ought to do it. That's why, as Scott points out correctly, we've got super majorities in both houses that will do it. Why would this not happen? Because the Republicans have this silly rule where you got to have 17, a full majority of Republicans do it, and they only got 18 in the Senate. There are already two guys saying they're not going to vote for it. Or you got to have 50 in the Assembly in order to do this. That is a ridiculous rule, but it's also ridiculous because it's the ideologues in both the Senate and the Assembly, only on the Republican side, who are keeping us from getting this done right. By the way, if you want to look at a bigger business, maybe some major business that has millions and millions of dollars of electricity, you know what the advantage for them would be? Maybe 45, 50 bucks a month. That's not even a rounding error in their overall utility costs. Why, if we don't get this done, there's something seriously wrong with ideology that's trumping reality.
Well, Chuck, you may recall that I was the chair of the Energy and Utilities Committee in the State Assembly back in the day. And I was one of those folks who was pushing deregulation hard. We were successful in getting that done. I think it provided big benefits. Also was always trying to find ways to introduce some sort of free market competition to what has always been, at least since the early 1900s, when Wisconsin invented the idea of the Public Service Commission. It's always been a highly regulated industry. In this case, there's a federal rule that actually sort of trumps what you would consider, but it's not a Trump rule, it's an Obama rule, but it sort of trumps what would be the normal free market ideology driving down prices. The belief that competition drives down prices is something that holds true in many areas of life and many areas of the economy. But in this case, the federal government, in an effort to get utilities to invest more money in the transmission system, because America's transmission systems are not up to snuff and they need to be improved. They said, tell you what, if the people in this state put more money in and their local utilities build more transmission lines, we'll have all their neighbors help subsidize it. But if someone not from the state, not a local utility, builds that transmission line, then they don't get this benefit. They don't get this incentive. Well, that incentive is so large that it's bigger than any savings that would come from competition. So if your goal is to get to the lowest possible price, then you want to participate. Our neighbors are already having us pay for theirs. I mean, Iowa, Minnesota, Michigan, I think, all of them are already doing this, and they're sticking us with part of the tab. It's time that we say, hey, you guys, you need to pay for part of ours as well. So every once in a while, as you said, ideology collides with reality, and it has to do in this case with the way the federal government has tilted the playing field for this thing. It makes more sense for the local utilities to build this in this particular case.
And Scott is absolutely right. And you only have so much time. And this is why this is an ultimate insider issue that we're talking about now. Scott's absolutely right. And I was talking to people just earlier today who made that very same point that Scott made, because at the end of the day, we don't get that subsidy. That doesn't help. Plus, we've got to manage this stuff after it's gone. Do we want the guys who are currently in the state handling that? Or will we like somebody from Texas who will never answer a phone call once they're gone from the state? And the other thing is, at the end of the day, competition oftentimes in these areas means I'm going to pay my guys less money than you're going to pay your guys for the job. Why would we want to give that to people from Texas when it's going to, or it could be given to people who are getting better wages with benefits in the state of Wisconsin? So ideology here should not trump reality, and reality should get us a good Wisconsin managed, Wisconsin built system. And somehow or another, the legislature, in particular the Republicans here, have to find a way to let this happen. Maybe it's just saying, you know what, we're going to go to the floor and see what happens. By the way, that might be good for Republican leaders, because they might be able to say to some of their obstreperous ideological guys, look at Nas, you can't hold this up. You do this to us all the time. We're going to make this one on you. And let's go to the floor, and then you can be seen as the guy who kept this from happening. We're just not going to stand for that. I think once in a while, even as a leader, you got to show to your members that you will do what is right for the state, not necessarily what is right for the guy who wants to be obstreperous and obstructionist. And by the way, that's what happens. And that's why when you have legislatures that are closer, you get better results. Why? Because all of a sudden at 1815, the Republicans can't afford to get by the two guys that are already out there saying they won't vote for this legislation. This is a good example, although it's an insider baseball thing that nobody really knows about outside of the legislature and the lobbyists. This is a good example of why driving our state closer together when we're a 50-50 state will help us.
Stay tuned for more insight from the insiders.
See you next time.
You've been listening to The Insider with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.